offense didn't look so good.
Nope, because of karma, obviously. That fucking guy. He refused to dunk on Sean Payton, and the karmic forces of the universe said, "What the fuck is wrong with you? We had a plan, and now you must pay." That's why you don't fuck with karma in that. You don't ever think about future karma. You just do, and you allow the universe to unfold as it will, because you can't know. Here we are, Abe Cast Iron Brains, a podcast here on Earth during the Cenozoic era of the Phanerozoic eon, which may not be the best time to be alive, just by reading the news and listening to all the people. But it's certainly better than all the other eras and eons, so far as we can tell. My name is Bob, sitting across the way from my good friend and co-host. That's Abe. How you doing tonight, Abe?
Doing well, Bob.
Yeah, here we are. Lori's here too. How you doing tonight, Lori?
If it's not the best era to be alive, but it's better than all of the other ones, isn't it the best one?
I think you got me there.
You're a fucking idiot.
Colloquially, people complain all the time about the best time and then not the, Tonight is Monday, October 2nd, 2023. My brother Ryan's birthday.
Look
Happy
at
birthday,
that, another
Ryan.
birthday episode.
Yet another birthday episode. Seems like they happen all the goddamn time. You know what my favorite people in the world don't do on their birthdays, though, Abe? They don't insist on everyone gathering in foreign countries in order to celebrate them.
Even if it's like a round kind of like 40th or 50th or like Jimmy Carter had his 99th, like some big occasion.
99 birthdays for the great Jimmy Carter. Did you see the picture that went around of him in the parade? Like he and Rosalind got in the back of an SUV.
With a Braves hat?
Yep, he had a Braves hat on. He looked like death in a Braves hat is what Jimmy Carter looked like in that picture.
He looked 99. I mean,
yeah, extremely 99 in the still shot, and I'm sure not much better in the video. Good for Jimmy, though. And I have some good news. Actually, let's do that right now so that we don't have to do it later. Many of our interests collide here, Abe, because Mark Strassmann went to Plains, Georgia.
Oh, that's right.
And gave a report.
I'm a little annoyed you haven't been there.
Me or Abe?
Abe.
Yeah, I have not. I'll get to it.
You should really go.
Is it like a very small town?
You're going to go visit Plains, and Jimmy Carter is going to die in a fire. That's what's going to happen.
Look at Maggie's face. Look at Maggie's face in this still shot. Maggie's like, you wouldn't fucking believe it, but Jimmy Carter's still alive. That's the face that she's making.
There's a big birthday celebration in Georgia this weekend for our 39th president. Mark Strassmann has the details.
Happy birthday to you. They're celebrating a birthday in Tiny Plains, Georgia.
Grab a cupcake.
Jimmy Carter's birthplace 99 years ago today.
Get down there and hang out as a family, just be a really small private event. He can't party like he used to for his 99th birthday. So
none of us can.
Right, none of us can. That's exactly right.
I love you, Jimmy Carter. Happy birthday.
Americans celebrate with him. Amen. The famous
and happy birthday, President Carter.
And the everyday.
99.
A Jimmy Carter peanut gallery of well-wishers. The White House wooden cake, 39 candles for the 39th president. It's some salute, considering most Americans alive today were born after Jimmy Carter left the White House in 1981 and moved back here.
That sign is up all the time.
He's like the father of the town. He's the heart of the town. And we just celebrate him every day.
When Carter entered hospice back in February, his family thought he had days to live. 7 months later, he's earned all this birthday fuss.
He's modest. And, but, he smiles. He likes the attention.
He's proud of it.
He's very proud of it.
Jimmy and Rosalind Carter, now married 77 years, will celebrate the day as true Southerners with family fried chicken, and caramel cake, his favorite.
They've gotten to experience this outpouring of support over these last several months that has really been gratifying.
And we also want to wish President Carter a happy birthday from all of us here at Face the Nation.
Abe, did senior national news correspondent for CBS News, Mark Strassmann, get off a good one in Plains, Georgia this weekend?
No.
Ooh, sorry, Mark. Try again next time.
He did. The peanut gallery.
Lori liked the veritable peanut gallery of well-wishers, I think is what the line was.
Yeah, that's not bad. They should just let him just stay there, right? I mean, there'll probably be an additional story.
No, Strassmann, not...
Yeah, Strassmann
Carter.
doesn't need to go far. I could just start working on the next story about planes.
Look, I'm not saying that Strassmann can't stretch himself to do basically anything. He being not only CBS News' senior national news correspondent, but arguably the greatest to ever embrace the form of short-form television journalism. But I'm not sure that if I were a news director at CBS News, that Strassmann carries with him the gravitas necessary to the Carter obituary piece. I would
cry,
not.
Bob.
I
He's
would not trust him.
listening.
So you're saying go do this soft
I'm saying that what he would do is definitely refer back to that Mr. Peanut Super Bowl commercial debacle where they killed off Mr. Peanut. That would almost certainly come up, and we can't have that. So sorry, Strasser, you're not going out there.
So you're the CBS News decider, and you're not sending Strassmann for the coverage. It'll be somebody more with more.
I mean,
gravitas?
am I me in that job, or am I like someone who's come up through the ranks at CBS News? Is the question.
That's a good point.
If
Let's say
I'm me, only Mark Strassmann goes and does anything, and we remake the entire CBS effort modeled after
We rename
Mark
news
Strassmann.
Mark Strassmann.
That's right. Mark Strassmann hosts Face the Nation and also the nightly news product, and also he replaces Tony DeCopel on the morning show.
So it's like gonna be like the Stephen A. guy for like CBS. He'll just be everywhere. I don't know if Strassmann just said that at the end just to kind of say it, but like, do 99-year-olds eat like fried chicken? I always just thought like, but by the end of your life, like you're not eating just like risky food like that.
I don't think he's eaten anything in the last 7 months.
He celebrated with it.
It's just been
okay. So it's just like in his presence, like the chicken.
Yeah.
IVs and protein paste and whatever else they can get down his throat.
Yeah, that sounds more like it, right? Like softer food.
They didn't say he ate fried chicken.
They
said he celebrated with fried chicken.
Yeah, I mean the White House built him a wooden cake. It's not like he's not going to get a slice. He's way too fucking old. The grandson has no credibility whatsoever, by the way. He's been giving interviews over the last couple of weeks talking about how, the last few months, really. Yeah, he's really on his last legs. Both of them are, they're right at death's door. He keeps saying it like he's trying to wish it into existence.
I mean, he's defying probably all expectations. I mean, like Strassmann said, like they're expecting maybe days once he went into hospice care, and it's been more than that. His grandson has made several attempts at office, like to use like his name. Hey, I'm Carter's grandson. Like vote for me, like in favorable districts, and it just wouldn't take.
Yeah.
So I guess he's just doing this now, just waiting for his old grandpa to die.
Hey, we are now October 2nd, right? We are in the final quarter.
Oh, geez.
Of the year. We have 9 months into the second year that this was not a
You're
prediction.
bad at this,
This
Abe.
was not a prediction made for 2023. I want to be
fair,
clear. It was
1 out of
eventually
2.
it was re-upped to 2023. Is Jimmy Carter going to hold on through the end of this calendar year and make it to 2024?
Not only that, he will not make it to December, the 1st of December, right? So it'll be within the next
8 weeks.
days.
8 weeks, 9 weeks, something like that. Bold.
And for the record, the Queen died right on schedule. Like she played it right. This guy, not so much. So what are we gonna do?
What'd you get up to this weekend, Abe? Anything noteworthy or interesting?
Nothing noteworthy. I mean, like at the end, when we do, what did you watch? I watched like a couple of movies. I saw that David Byrne, whatever, Stop Making Sense thing with the Talking Heads. That's what it is. Yes.
Right.
And then I watched football over the weekend, but nothing beyond.
We
that.
went to Philadelphia, or just outside of Philadelphia. I got in the car, drove up for Andrew and Dre's wedding.
How was it?
It was beautiful.
It was great.
It went off perfectly well. I think there were no problems. Our kids got to do their little. They were involved in the wedding as one of two sort of sketches.
Oh, nice.
I mean, they basically did a comedy routine in the middle of the wedding, which went over very well.
They wrote their own thing?
Yes, they wrote sort of. They wrote, they were asked.
We tied them down and made them write stuff.
Right. They were asked to write a poem or something explaining or talking about marriage and love and that sort of thing. Right. And my son spent about 6 to 8 weeks throwing his body down on the floor and the couch when he was supposed to be writing this, much in the fashion that it would take me to write something of any substance whatsoever, even if I have a pretty good idea.
Calvin has completed more writing than Bob has this year.
True. You'll often find me throwing my body onto the floor and the couch in agony at the prospect of having to drag the words out of myself. And he's following suit in that fashion. But Katie wrote like 8 pages of diary entry, just run on nonsense.
The girl got shit done.
Nice.
As usual.
You
say, hey, do this thing. And the woman goes, okay, I'll do that. Here
are the ceaseless thoughts pouring from my brain slightly around the universe of the word marriage. It's like, okay, I can write 40 sentences about that. No problem. Without even thinking. It's just, Calvin struggled, but eventually got enough sentences down on the page where I was able to, like, they composed, right? They wrote the words, and I arranged. I took what they had written and turned it into something that sounded fairly coherent, and it went off very well. And it was good.
They did this like at the reception. Like, I wonder, like, is this like
in the midst of the
ceremony?
Instead of any of the like religious weird stuff or any anything of like anything official, they just had my grandmother come up and give a little speech about she being quite aged. She's very old. She's the oldest person that they know, probably. So they invited her to do stuff. And then my kids are the sort of the youngest people that they know who are capable of expressing themselves in any such fashion. And so I think that was sort of the idea, is we're going to have this.
And it was the oldest person at the wedding and the youngest people at the wedding.
Right. So exactly, the bookends, as you said, Abe, were there to give their thoughts and blessings to the proceedings. And yeah, otherwise a beautiful situation there. That's
an interesting approach. Was this something that they came up with, or just like a thing? Like, is it like a...
I don't know. I've never seen it done quite this way before.
These are people who dated for like 9 years and spent the last like 3 years going to all of their friends' weddings. So
so they picked up some things?
They got to, I mean, I'm not saying they picked it up, but like they've had a lot of time to think about what they do and don't want at their own wedding.
So there was no religious component?
No.
I mean, there was like his aunt, my former step aunt, because we have a weird family, was the officiant, or she was there giving the whatever.
Efficient in the way where you can just print something online and you're like,
she
whatever.
Was not...
Yeah, I don't think that she's. Yeah.
No, she's never done that before.
No, she's never done it before. She did it. She got
was very good.
Fake ordained by some online institution.
So like just, hey.
Yeah, and whatever. She probably had to fill out a piece of paper in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to make it official.
Isn't it?
I thought Pennsylvania was another Commonwealth, wasn't it?
Yeah, it is. Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Kentucky.
Yeah.
That's very important that we know that. I think she was probably certainly certified legally to do it, but in terms of the not big on the God stuff
there was no religion in the ceremony that I noticed.
Oh, I see. So this wasn't held like at a... for some reason, I don't know why, just in my head, I just assumed it was like at a church or something.
No, it was at an anthropology. It was great.
Yeah. Apparently Anthropology, the fancy clothing store, also has wedding venues that you can rent out.
Some smart business person. Like, hey, we can just get this side business.
It was very good.
That was good. And we all got dressed up and looked like dopes. And like
I looked awesome because my makeup was done professionally.
it's a very weird thing that we do. I mean, obviously,
It's so weird.
It
What
is.
is the weird part?
The weird thing, it's just across cultures. It's like, okay, people are getting married. Let's dress nice.
Oh, I see.
Let's all gather from
The
all of our
gathering,
far-flung people that we know vaguely. We're going to bring them all together, and then we're going to eat this gigantic meal.
Well, and the food, that's just so, but the getting dressed up part, it seems to be most cultures doing this.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, right? I mean, it is kind of a universal
Why are we getting
thing.
dressed up?
But isn't this like it falls under like life events? So back in the day, there weren't all these other forms
You
of
don't get dressed up when
amusement.
someone's born.
No, but if you go to a funeral, people usually will put something on. I mean,
know,
not like
it's weird.
formal like this, but sometimes they'll be like not so much how fancy you wear it, but like the color scheme, like they want like,
Right.
black or
Trying to
some other
communicate
thing.
something. Yeah.
Right. It's like, oh, this is a solemn occasion. But yeah, like maybe people are just like, if there's an opportunity to like celebrate, people will kind of take advantage of that, and they're like, hey, we don't see, the extended family, they don't see each other. There aren't many occasions to see each other. Wedding is the one thing, because like if a kid is born, people don't. If you're an extended family, you're not going to go out of your way to see some kid. But if
Well,
there's
that's
a
what
wedding,
like a christening or whatever is, but you get dressed up for that too.
okay. But yeah, so
Yeah, it was fun, and we're not big.
very nice time.
We're not big party people. As soon as the music got loud, we stepped right outside, and but it was nice because it was like the reception was right there next to where they had the ceremony. So like, there's the ceremony, and then the shades came up, and you stepped across the sidewalk sort of into the cocktail hour, and then the doors opened and you stepped through the threshold into the dining room and the dance area, so it all just happened in a very
awesome.
compact area.
nice.
And
setup.
you could be inside where the music was extraordinarily loud, or you could just be outside sort of on the patio where the bar was, and there were heat lamps and standing around and drinking and eating stuff. It's a very good setup. I don't understand the appeal of, I mean, this goes for the club, it goes for the wedding, it goes for basically every venue ever. Why does it have to be so godforsaken loud?
No. Because if you're at the club or at a concert, you're not trying to have a conversation.
Right, I
That's
didn't mean
not
the club,
what you're
but
here
like the
for.
bar, like a place where you wouldn't necessarily go to like dance and throw your body around, but you're there to have conversation with people. Why is it so goddamn loud in the bar? And it's like they turn the music up.
It was
so that
so loud.
The people at the tables have to then talk louder, and then they have to turn the music up even louder in order to be heard over the people talking, and then the people are just, by the end of it, just screaming at each other.
That's why my voice is gone.
Yeah.
And also I might have a cold, but caused by staying up late talking.
I see.
Yeah.
Too loud.
Both of you, were you guys ever okay with loudness? Like in,
I love loud. We went to a concert, and I would say it was not loud enough. It was due to where our seats were. It's not.
It was the appropriate amount of loud. It was not.
Okay.
We brought the children,
Yeah, the kids came. We went
so
to
it
see.
was good.
Oh, that's right.
What you call it, the Dropkick Murphys. Perfectly good concert. They're not like one of my favorite bands. I think that they made basically one really fun, good record. The
Bob doesn't like punk music, and it's fine.
Blackout record is a good one. I don't even know if you can call them punk. They're sort of
But
punk
you don't.
adjacent.
But I'm not calling them punk. I'm saying you don't like punk music, so it's not your thing.
Sure, but still, they're fun. They put on a good show.
They're great, but it
And-
was not loud enough for me. And like, the wedding was louder than that.
I don't know if the wedding was louder
It
than
was
that. That's
whatever.
ridiculous. It's a silly thing to say.
I swear the
That
wedding
concert was
louder
so
than the
fucking
concert.
loud.
No, I didn't feel like it was loud enough. But that's my own problem because I wouldn't normally see that concert from far back where children might be. I
Right.
would be in the speaker
We were basically in the middle of that venue. I don't know why we were
far
almost
back in the
exactly in
venue.
the middle of the venue. We were right where the sound guy sets up in order to make sure that the sound is good. Like to me, it sounded great as far as
sounded great.
It was very clear. It was not
Professional rock band.
yeah, it was not overdoing the setup or anything like that. It sounded very good and was not too loud. But yeah, they're a fun band and they put on a good show, and it was a perfectly good show. For a kid's first concert, I think. And it makes me want to take them to music that they already know. Because, like, it's one thing to have heard these
Okay.
songs, like, one time.
Whose fault is it they don't know it?
Yeah, I suppose.
Your fault.
Why would I be playing them fucking Dropkick Murphys on repeat all the
Because
time?
it's great.
It's fine.
Why would you play them Red Hot Chili Peppers all the time?
Because they like it, and it's way better.
They
than
like it
Dropkick
because
Murphys.
you play it.
Anyway, all beside the point. And even to some, my complaining about the noise and the reception is a little bit beside the point. But like when you're sitting down to have the dinner part of the wedding, like the DJ does not have to turn up the music so loud that you have like literally have to yell to be heard by the person more than one seat away from you, just in order for any chance. And the whole point of sitting down at a wedding is to be able to talk to the people who know you have decided you should be seated around because they think that you're going to have a good time catching up or just having a conversation or whatever. And when they're playing that fucking music that fucking loud during the eating and talking portion of the evening, it's too much.
Right.
Save it for when the dance floor opens, you bums. Also, watching my brother dance with my mother made me realize that there is probably not an amount of human money that you could pay me to do that thing in the fashion that they did it. It is beyond my personal capability of even doing, I think.
What did they do that's different than, imagining just like a dance?
They got up and they danced to some, I don't know, like some
Like a
70s disco-y, like
I could think
something that you would have heard in a wedding 1,000 times before. It's one of those, like Donna fucking Summer or something like that. And, it is fine. I'm sure they appear to be having a very good time doing that. But there's just literally zero chance that is something that I could bring myself to do.
Is
There's
it because you're just against dancing, or is it like you just don't like the custom of like the father and the bride or the mother and the groom?
There are 120 people who know me intimately in the room, right? This is the setup. There's 120 some odd people that I have decided to invite from all corners of this country to come celebrate me.
Yes.
And then further, 30 support staff who just work there, who are just walking around, who might catch a glimpse of the goings-on. There's no chance that I would put myself at the center of all of those eyeballs and then pretend to know how to dance and then execute some stupid skit for the gathered masses. It's not happening.
Okay, so just to be clear, they didn't do like a whole dance, right? This is not like Dancing with the Stars kind of coordination.
No.
This is like
it's like 2.5
dance.
minutes of like jumping around and like swinging your mom around by her arm. Like it was, it was not something that they choreographed or practiced or anything like that.
Okay.
It was just awkward.
Katie's going to find out and make Bob do a dance.
No, it's not. Not in the cards. I'm raising her.
I'm going to take the over on that. I think that's
I'm raising her to be someone who does not want such things.
You don't know how children work.
Yeah.
She's going to do the opposite of what you want. Have you met your parents? You think they wanted you this way?
She can do the opposite of what I want until she's 25 or 30, and then she's going to realize how wise all of the things that I wanted for her.
Just like you think
were.
about your parents.
Yes, that is exactly how I think about my parents.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was great. It was beautiful, and there are no complaints. I got to chat with my buddy Brian about youth sports for the bulk of the evening. Was the main thing that we talked about. as he is also a now fired Little League coach. We got to hear that story.
What?
I can't possibly do it justice. Just suffice it to say that the extent to which we take Little League seriously here in Charlottesville only scratches the surface of how seriously it is taken in other parts of the country.
Oh, it's a
Just in
different
other
beast?
leagues.
Or,
It's not,
Really?
or just in other leagues, yes. And
Wow.
yeah, it's serious business. It's interesting because I don't remember my coaches ever taking Little League nearly this seriously when we were kids. And we had fun, and we took it seriously. We wanted to win, and it was that sort of thing. And my question is sort of, being a child, did I just not realize how emotionally and psychologically invested the grown-ups were in the goings-on the field? Or is it more likely the case that they didn't care nearly as much as the coaches that I watch in our league, and to some extent me even? Like, I don't know. Like, to me, I modeled my coaching as much as I can off of the two guys who were my favorite coaches growing up, which is Coach Weimert for soccer and Coach Zakatansky for baseball, who were mostly interested in making sure that all the kids had a good time and learned something about the sport. And we're just like nice, affable guys who all of the kids liked. And like, and you like learn something about sportsmanship and being a good, always trying your best and all of that shit. Like, is it just that I got super lucky with those two dudes? And in fact, the rest of the Little League people were all fucking try-hard maniacs in the way that so much of the coaches that I encounter, even at this level, are. And certainly, apparently, that Brian has encountered in his league. Or has something fundamentally changed in the culture that allows these grown-ass men to care so much about a child's game? And I don't know the answer to it.
I do wonder if like it attracts a certain. I mean, it obviously attracts different types of parents, but like there's got to be something behind why so many parents get into these arguments. Sometimes it's not coaches versus coaches. It's like, parents in the stands are taking some. They take issue with some decision the umpire made, and then there's like
screaming at 14-year-old umpires, just grown-ass human beings screaming at 14-year-old volunteer umpires.
And I've seen a handful of 60 Minutes and less so, but like Real Sports with Brian Gumble, like these news magazines where they show like some parent gets mad at some ump, and in the example that I remember, it was an adult umpire, but they were like overseeing like kids, like Little League, right? But the parent got so upset, like he like sucker punched the guy and killed him. Like, and this was just like one of the examples that they gave us to like how out of control some Little League fields have become, where parents are like getting into fights with other parents from the opposing team, with the managers who are other parents, with the umpires. And I thought like there was like a bad period and things have gone up, because I haven't heard much about it since. Like this was like 10 years ago. I thought things were getting better, but it seems like some of the same issues remain.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know what the hell is the matter with people. Let's see. Anything else to say about the wedding or the weekend? What else did we do?
We watched football.
We watched a bunch
bad.
of football. It was nearly bad. It was.
Oh yeah, that was rough. This Georgia team is very. I mean, they were winning all the games. And
Lori might want to take off on us early, so let's do the thing that we usually do.
We have to do football and
at
then
the end of the show, because Lori's not feeling well. Lori needs to sleep. Anyway, we were watching football. The Georgia-Auburn game was really quite something, certainly. Any thoughts on the Georgia-Auburn game, Abe?
I'm most concerned about this defense. Like when they go up against, I think it was South Carolina, man. Like a competent quarterback, they look bad in the secondary with passing. Like a team that's semi-decent at running, and they allow, I don't know, was it over 200 yards? It seems
got
like
a good running back too.
Like that defense, like the last couple of seasons were like, even if the offense is kind of struggling, the defense will just shut it down.
I actually think that this secondary is very good. I think that the secondary has proven fairly reliable. The the four in the back, I think, are good. That front seven is a complete mess right now, and there is nobody there who's really taking over games the way that we've had players take over games, whether it's on the front four or one of the linebackers. It seems like it's been a couple of years since we had a game-changing linebacker at Georgia.
Nolan Smith last year.
He was good. He was also hurt for the bulk of the season, as I recall. So it seems like it's been a while, and this Auburn coach, this fucking piece of shit Hugh Freeze, had a good idea, right? Which is, let's just sort of run the option with the quarterback and barely throw the ball at all. And when they did throw the ball, it was short and quick, sort of work in the middle, fucking with that linebacking core. And otherwise, it just worked really well. Every time that quarterback would keep it, he was gone for 10, 15, 20 yards. It's a very frustrating game to watch. But ultimately, we have Brock Bowers. And
yes, boy.
Also, that was Carson Beck's first road game. And
Carson Beck was, despite missing a couple of long ones, was really, really good, I thought. And he has put together now a handful of drives over the last, both in the South Carolina game and in this game, that are near flawless in terms of execution. And when you absolutely needed it, he was there to do the job. And I have no idea what the rest of the season will bring. I think that we should be concerned, obviously, about the fact that these have been close games against teams that are not expected to be very good or don't appear to be very good. But I like the way that this team in the last 2 weeks has, like, it's not like it was a complete disaster. It's not like everything is falling apart. It's just that they are battling and they're staying in it and they're winning the game anyway. And who knows? It could be Ole Miss, which scored like 60 fucking points this weekend. It could be even Kentucky.
Could be fucking Kentucky this weekend with a running back. Could
be Tennessee. Somebody is likely to get us at some point this season. And
not
it will
Florida.
just be seemingly not Florida.
Fuck
no.
Florida, no.
But yeah, it was fun. We were in the hotel lobby of an Embassy Suites outside of Philadelphia, watching on like an 85-inch screen, and
wow.
being those obnoxious people in the lobby hooting and hollering.
We're fucking. It's in the chant. It's built in. Also, in this Embassy Suites, I was going down the stairs, minding my own business, passed by two people. Some man says, Georgia Bulldogs. And I said, yeah. I said, yeah, go Dogs. And he said, Roll Tide. I said, how dare you? Like, fuck off, sir. I wasn't doing anything. I was walking down the stairs.
I did not expect the Alabama. I would have assumed that he was going to tie it to, like, oh, there's a lot of them with the Eagles, since they were in Philly or something.
That's the thing. We're in friendly territory in Philly. Like, we're all on the same team here. Fuck off. Fuck right off. Fuck you, that guy. So, like, I don't feel bad being a drunk, obnoxious Georgia fan in a hotel lobby.
It's very funny that you take that so, like, personally, whereas, like,
I would never say that to someone.
It's so you said go Dogs to him, and he said...
He commented first! I would notice if he was wearing an Auburn shirt, I would think, oh, that's a very bad person walking down the stairs. I wouldn't say, Auburn.
At least it would have been appropriate had the Auburn guy said War Eagle at you, given the game this weekend.
He did not. It was I don't even think he was an Alabama. Fuck him. No, that's the thing. It's inappropriate. He started the conversation.
Yeah.
If you say to someone, oh, that team, you're going to assume, yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'm afraid he got you, is what the moral of the story is here.
Alabama fans have done that to me so much.
Yeah.
What's weird about this Alabama fan, you would think that would be an opportunity for him to say, okay, our interest aligned, like beat Auburn. Because I hate,
go Dogs, beat Auburn.
There were so many like positive like ways to talk about it, then he chose the...
No, he doesn't. He was a very mean person. I hope he was on that bus that caught on fire.
Well, not very nice.
I don't hope he died. I just hope that all his stuff got ruined.
Second degree.
And I hope that he thinks of me.
All right. Have we successfully completed the thing that you wanted to talk about? All right.
Unless you're going to talk about something else.
We can talk about all sorts of things. I'm not done yet.
Are you just going to talk?
I'm just getting rolling.
About...
Okay, we just got this boulder to the top of the hill here. We got to talk about, I don't know, boring trans and SCOTUS stuff.
God,
how about that?
Bob has a problem. He's obsessed with this trans stuff.
Oh, is he?
I'm certainly not
it's
obsessed
like
with the trans
all
stuff.
of his podcasts are like trans podcasts.
No, it just so happened that this week, Andrew Sullivan had on somebody who's written a lot about trans stuff.
Total coincidence.
And so I put that on, and we were listening to that in the car.
And then he went to his trans podcast.
The next podcast in the lineup there on my app was something called A Wider Lens, which is sort of an obnoxious way of phrasing a conversation around anything. If you're going to, like, the way they introduced this podcast, which, by the way, I think has valuable material within it and has interesting conversations a lot of the time. And again, as with anything, you don't have to agree with everything that is said on any single topic to find it valuable to interact with. I know that's fucking anathema at this point. But they introduce the podcast every week with, like, we're a podcast that does this and this, and, like podcasts do, because they're good at branding, and I am not. And instead, I write a new intro every week. One of the women says, the thinking person's take on gender. It's like, you can't do that. Like you are poisoning the entire situation here when you say that everybody else who thinks about this isn't thinking or not thinking clearly. And instead, if you're here to listen to us, you must be the smart ones.
Right.
And everybody else can
Bob's
fuck off.
obsessed with it. He can't let it go.
I'm not obsessed with it.
So
I'm
have fun with your chat about
fascinated by
gender again. Why don't you talk about also police?
Here's what we can talk about
killings
before Lori leaves, because it
and
made
the
her
Supreme
sad
Court.
last time. Mammals' time on Earth is half over, scientists predict.
I don't trust this part of science.
Half over. That's still plenty of time.
They don't know anything. They don't know.
Yeah, they
They think that they know, but they don't know.
It's the New York Times. A new model suggests that in 250 million years, all land will collide into a supercontinent that boosts warming and pushes mammals to extinction.
Oh, man.
Whatever.
I can't
Good
tell you how
night.
little I care about what happens 250 million years from now. Like,
He doesn't care.
It's funny that you don't care. To me, this was like, I laughed and laughed and laughed when I saw this pop across the screen. Good night, Lori.
Good night.
good night.
I'm sure it was a function of what I had just been reading, like in the moments before. It was probably some like Kevin McCarthy and Matt Gaetz are fighting about who's going to be the speaker moving forward. And this, just petty fucking garbage nonsense about nothing. And then I pull up this tab and it's like, we've pretty much figured out that our time here is limited to just the next 250 million years. And then there just won't be any more fucking humans.
We're under a time crunch. Didn't this whole planet start out with a big supercontinent? It worked out just fine.
Yeah, so that's exactly what's going to happen again, is that we were once a Pangea, and apparently we are going to reform into a super Pangea of some sort. I forget the exact name for it. Is it just super Pangea? I don't know, whatever.
What's go ahead.
It's going to amass at the equator, and the reformation of all of the continents into one landmass is going to create, as the layman even might suspect, a great deal of physical trauma to the Earth when all of the continents crash into each other. Admittedly, it's a low speed transaction
It would have
that
to
happens
be, yeah.
here. But still, it's going to be a bad time, resulting in devastating earthquakes and also volcanic activity, the likes of which the planet only sees once every fucking 500 million years or whatever, right? And so we'll also be this is expected to happen around the equator, and so the average temperature, the surface of the Earth is going to exceed, I think, like 115 or 120 degrees Fahrenheit, which is not conducive to the way that we've been living up to this point, but also just the amount of particles and particulate matter in the air and the blocking out of the sun it's just going to be a bad time, and it's going to be tough for mammals to survive, and if at all.
You know, I do wonder. So let's say there are three possibilities, right, for humans, right? So either, so in 250 million years, we're either long gone already, right? Like we fucked up somehow and we're all dead, right? So we're already extinct and it doesn't matter. The other option is like we fucked off this planet and we found much better planets elsewhere, right? So like it doesn't matter again, or like there's only so few people here that they can, tolerate.
It would have to be such a massive jump in technology, the likes of which
250 million years is plenty of runaway. Come on, we should be able to get that easily by then. Easily. Look what's happened in the last 40 years. I mean, just extrapolate that, Bob.
I mean, first of all, we don't know when the land mass is going to form precisely. Yeah, sure, 250 million years. But I would imagine that that's a long period of time for all sorts of cataclysmic events to take place, which could, in the intervening years, wipe out humans before then. But it's nice to have, I mean, nice, maybe not the word for it, but it's nice to know, because in my head it was always like, okay, in like 2 billion years or so, the sun is going to expand to such a size that it will swallow up the Earth. I think that's right. I think it's like 2 billion years or so from now. Okay. So in my head it was like, well, probably significantly less than that. Obviously, humans will be disposed with, but at the very far end of human survivability in the solar system is like 2 billion years, because eventually the sun gets so big that it just consumes everything all the way out to the Earth, which is sort of impossible to really wrap your head around, right? Like, how do you even consider that? But it's nice to now be able to lower that bar to just the next 250 million years.
Yes, of course.
I mean, it's a bad time. Also, and this is slightly related, this is at the same time, same week that I saw this short little animation going around on Twitter, which showed the Milky Way galaxy and the nearest other the Andromeda galaxy, what's going to happen 4 to 5 billion years from now. This is an artist's rendering. Obviously, there's no video of such thing. But
that'd be
make
quite
sure there's
exclusive if somebody actually got footage.
I'll make sure there's a link in the show note. But watch this. Oh man, it's real bad. It's you gotta watch it again. There, these two galaxies, bam, and they're just spinning off into nothing. Like every single piece of matter being so violently overthrown in that sort of a moment, which I don't know what this, like you watch these videos and it's like, this is a time-elapse thing.
Right.
And this is what's going to take place over the course of 5 minutes, but you watch it, it's like 10 seconds. This is a 10-second video. I have no idea how long it takes galaxies to slam into each other 5 billion years from now, but just the violence and obliteration of that. And I mean, obviously, thank goodness, all mammals will be long gone by then. Although maybe we'll have come back a couple of times in the intervening billion years or so.
Right. I know that none of us will be around to verify whether I'm right or wrong on this, but I can 100% guarantee you that this little prediction, if it comes true, will not impact humans at all. Like, either we'll be long gone or we will be beyond our stupid little human bodies, right? Like, come on. There's no way we're just dicking around with this human form, right, by then. Like, I'm sure there's going to be some movement away from that, like, transcend into some sort of little chip, and we can survive this.
It's very optimistic of you. Hominids are, I think, 6 or 7 million years old, right? The first hominid type, I think, was 7 million years ago. Human beings, as we know them today, roughly, was it 200,000 years ago?
Yeah, 200, yeah.
And I think every once in a while there's like a claim that's like, it's actually like 400,000 years ago. Like, fuck, we found this other skull, and maybe it's actually twice as long. But like at the very outside, like 500,000 years
being
would
generous.
be like a wild overestimation of how long human beings have been around. It's so no time at all. By any other scale beyond the scale of the human life, it's like none time. We're going to be gone. None of this shit matters. Sorry, Kevin McCarthy, about the speakership and all of that. But like, it's just, and this story, and like I was sitting around talking with family at this wedding that we were at, and of course everybody's been drinking, everybody's having a good time. But it's like the end of the night, and we're talking about more serious, more heavier things, weightier subjects
about life in like a quarter billion years from now.
Well, no, not exactly that, but just like the sorts of stories that we tell about ourselves. Like I got cousins taking philosophy classes, and we're talking about religion and that sort of thing. It's good times. My mother said something about how at some point over the course of this weekend, she was talking about how she believes that the human soul or what have you sort of chooses its mates along the way. So like I would have chose, like we mutually chose each other in some former dimension of existence. My mother and I did, and presumably you and I even, if you're going to talk about the way that people interact with each other, like the idea being that this is not coincidence, that we are beings that exist beyond the corporeal form. Right. We transcend that form, as you're saying, with the microchips, perhaps on the long run. But others have more metaphysical ideas about how that works, and that is a very common understanding. At the very least, some huge percentage of humans profess a belief in a soul that transcends the human body, that is identifiable to them in many cases, that it's like one's identity is somehow this soul thing that is separate from the body. And like all of those are just made up stories. And I don't want to be like, I'm not trying to be dismissive of anybody's beliefs.
But they're
like,
comforting, right?
They're supremely comforting, but they have no truth value, right? They have there's nothing to test them against. There's nothing about them that speaks to anything that could be considered. And this is where I get into trouble with objective versus subjective truth. But I think arguably even subjective truth, it does not withstand that level of scrutiny, right? Like it requires telling yourself a story to such an extent that you cannot honestly call it truth in the way that word is meant to have any actual meaning. Maybe that's just because I've long argued with people about objective reality versus subjective reality, and that's probably just a bugaboo of mine. But I actually think that distinction matters, and I'm not picking on my mom for believing silly things that aren't true, in particular. But like, we are a species, and perhaps uniquely so, a species who relies on these sorts of stories and depends upon them and creates them. And there's just no other creature that is comparable in that way.
Because they lack the capacity, though, right? I mean, if the other animals, I mean, we don't know their capacity. There's a lot of just estimating or just kind of guessing. But I suspect that we do this, like this attaching meaning and story to make sense of the world. It's kind of like your operating system. Like you have the computer, but then like people didn't know how to like the MS-DOS, like where you have to like go do line of code. Like that's like the objective reality, and the subjective reality people are more comfortable with is here's a portal into that world, like through an operating system, and that's like the story. And so I don't know if we're the only ones because we're the only ones that choose to do that, or we're the only ones capable of the planet Earth types. I don't know about the aliens, but like here, I don't know, a dog doesn't like do this, right? Like, I don't think they just
No, and I think it's evolutionary psychology being the sort of suspect domain that it is. I think that it is what has allowed us to, like, the stories that we tell, this insistence that we need each other, right? Or that there's something that transcends this bodily moment. You cannot build civilization in the way that we've built it without and not even the way that we've built it, in the way that any civilization is built, if you cannot tell yourself a story about what came before and what comes after, right?
Right.
Just like it's just so much of our ability to survive as a species is tied into this story making and storytelling and story believing ability that we have beyond the abilities of the other creatures that we share the world with.
Right.
And that's why I'm seriously not trying to condemn it or to dismiss it as something that doesn't matter. But it's also, I think, incredibly important to recognize that this narrative building that we do might well be a function of life trying to propagate itself, and if you can recognize that and step outside of whatever stories it is that you tell yourself about you personally, maybe then you can start to come to a greater understanding of the way the world actually works around you.
Well, I don't know. Maybe this was brought up in your conversations over the weekend, but like, don't you think that like these stories are almost kind of like a survival trait? Like you needed, like, you know, for instance, like hope is kind of a story, right? Like a lot of people have hope for things getting better. You're just imagining a world where whatever short-term issues you're going through are not always going to be the case, or maybe your kids will have a better future. Like you have to kind of believe that. And so like, you know, many generations before, people were going through different hardships. Like they were either like slaves or like indentured, whatever, or just living just terrible lives. But you know, like the rational, you know, what if everybody just committed like mass suicide? Like, fuck this. This is not working for me. The objective truth is that this sucks, and I'm going to fuck off.
The grand opt out.
Right. That's like, what's the point of all of this? Because like, there's no like prospect of things getting better. You know, that's why I would just say people. I know I'm biased because I'm living in it, but like, life is so much better now, where there's at least some mobility that you could do. Like in the past, you were just like, I guess this is my life. I'm just gonna live this miserable life for like, you know, however many years, and that's it. And my kids will live the same miserable life, and their kids.
I'm going to move mud from this mud pit to that mud pit for this asshole who lives in the big house for the next 60 years of my miserable existence, and my kids are going to move the mud, and their kids are going to move the mud, and their kids' kids are going to move the mud, and that's just fucking life forever for thousands and thousands and thousands of generations of humans.
Right. And it's
Even the ones that weren't indentured assholes and who had like hunter-gatherer types, like I'm sure they had pretty good time from time to time, but like relatively speaking, do we want to live those lives of subsistence and hardship and cold and hot?
Especially, I tell people, like, when people complain about the heat and how cold it is whenever it does get cold, it's like you're like a few moments away from back to comfort, right? Like you just go back into some air-conditioned place. Like if it's like the dead of winter wherever, like it's cold for like a little bit, like from your house to your car, and then for the couple of moments it takes for it to heat up, unless you have a fancy car, and then like the rest of the time you're back to comfort. And same thing, like I don't care how hot it is, like you know, unless you're like out in the elements at all times, you're protected from the real world. Like you're not. Why are we completely incapable in a grand public way of appreciating how fucking good everything is? Because I think it's because you acclimate to your environment remarkably fast, and it's a good thing in the other way, where like, you know, there are all these stories that come out every like 6 months where like these fucking kids are all fat and none of them can pass the basic physical tests needed for the armed services, right? You always get these reports like 70% of the age-appropriate kids don't meet... They can't run a mile and they can't do 10 push-ups, right? Which is true now, but humans are very capable. If you can shape them up pretty quickly. Like within the year, you can shape anybody up, right? So like they're capable of that, but they also, like, if something is easier, they'll gravitate towards the easy, and like, and it's just like you just think this is normal. Like, so now you start complaining about the little things that aren't going away, right? So like, we're kind of myopic in that way. You have that perspective to like, or a wider lens, if you will, to kind of see like, hey, shit could be a lot worse. Like, I should appreciate the good things that I do have. And actually, we're going in the opposite way with social media, where like a lot of the stuff that gets engagement is like negative things, or just like fear, you know, like something scary or somebody looks stupid, but it's not like positive kind of like a feedback, or somebody else is living a great life and you're living the shit life. So like, I think that's what's kind of contributing to why people don't appreciate the good things that they do have. I did want to say real quick on the why do people believe things that are just, you know, beyond something you can prove. I think if you look at it from again, like just a utilitarian kind of way, it's like, it's almost necessary. Like what will help you survive, like through the sticky years, right? Or the sticky generations where things are not going well, we'll see each other again in better conditions, right? This whole heaven thing is a nice scheme because it's very comforting. It's good to know like all of my family is in this bad situation, but once they die, whatever hardships that they endured, we'll see each other again and we'll live happily ever after. I mean, that's just such a nice and comforting thought. Even if you're not going through anything at any given moment, that's a nice and comforting thought. And no, of course, that's going to take a hold of people. And it's everywhere, right? It's very universal. Like everywhere you go, even before they were contacted by other civilizations, everybody had their own little scheme about like what happens after and what happened before and soulmates and all that stuff. It's just a whole creation to serve a purpose of like, stick around, don't kill yourself. It protects you against like just killing yourself.
Right. I think it makes it functionally impossible to truly appreciate the current moment. I mean, I think it psychologically literally makes it impossible to appreciate the current moment if you imagine that there is some future utopia or some future metaphysical heaven in which your non-corporeal form will exist infinitely forever.
Right.
How can you possibly appreciate the current moment? I don't understand that.
Oh, you think why would that have an impact? You're like, oh, I don't care about these 80 years. I'll see you infinity later. Like what? Why can't you enjoy both? Like you enjoy this life.
If you have to dissociate so much from your current environment because of how painful it is, or because of how imperfect you believe it to be, then it is the opposite of trying to appreciate the current moment, right?
Well,
it is the exact opposite of trying to look around and appreciate for 1 second that we are an incredibly I can't it's such a trite thing to say, but to be alive in any conscious form is to exist, which is better than to not exist. And I like it's
unless you're going through like,
even if you're going through bad times, as you say.
If you're like a prisoner in North Korea, you would, this is better.
Right. And it's a very difficult thing to think about. There's literally someone in my state right now experiencing the most amount of pain, more pain than anyone else in my state, right? And then you take those 50 assholes in the 50 states, and one of them is experiencing the most amount of pain out of 350 million people in the United States of America. And then out of that fucking guy, there's somebody in Canada who might be experiencing even more pain than that right now at the hands of some unimaginable cruelty, to say nothing of what's going on with some prison camp in North Korea or however else you want to frame it. The suffering is unfathomable, and yet, on balance, to be a being experiencing the world in the way that we get to, right? I mean, especially to have some idea of your intelligence in the way that we do, like to be self-aware in that way. Like, holy fucking shit!
Right.
What an impossible gift, and it's so short, it's so temporary, and it's going to be gone so quickly. And to try to escape it, or to try to imagine a more perfect future or a more perfect past, is such a fucking shame to me.
But, don't you think that a lot of, there's a reason why so many of the major religions are very old, right? So like they were forged during a period where things were terrible, right? So it's like, what, like Muslims was 1,500 years, the Christians 2023 or 2,000 years ago or so. The Jewish go further back. The Hindus do a similar thing, like thousands of years ago, right? And like as things get better, like religion is playing less of a role in people's lives because maybe things are getting better. So maybe there is some sort of very weak connection between the two, but the reason why people believe is because it's become the story of their families, right? So like everything in like, if you're raised Roman Catholic or if you're like raised Muslim, there are all these traditions that are kind of tied to the religion. It just becomes a thing that's like the story. Like we're like, Southern Baptist. Like my father was Southern Baptist and his father was Southern Baptist and here we are. And so you're just kind of like, I guess this is what I believe, right? Like I don't think that there's a lot of thought put into, at least initially. You're just like you're growing up in this type of family, and most people just stick to that.
Not to derail what you're getting at here, but the reason that any of this conversation is even happening is because I was insisting on the primacy or the utility of a philosophical education. That though you do not. I cannot point to anything that I learned in philosophy class. Right. Like I don't have the arguments that Kant and Hume were making on file in my brain in a way that is useful to me at this point. I need to reread it. I need to refamiliarize myself with all of the stuff, if I even care to, which mostly I don't. That was not the thing that I gained from having read these people. The thing that I gained is that it helped me to question all of the things that I bring to the table in the stories that I tell, the things that I believe without even really thinking about them, to come into question. And I think that's an incredibly valuable thing to do when you are trying to be a person in the world, interacting with people who don't see the world as you do, right?
Right.
Like it's important to recognize that the things that you believe, the stories that you tell about yourself, about your life, and about the world around us are just that. And that fundamentally they stand on nothing, largely, that they don't actually contain real truth value. They're good for you, maybe. They work for you to tell that story. But it's worth tearing down. It's worth examining the extent to which those are they're built on things that are not true, that are not lies, and it makes you a more humble person. It creates in you a genuine humility about how, sure, it can. Maybe it doesn't automatically, but I think it can inculcate in a person a genuine humility about how to approach the world and the other people in it, and What
if like the reason why people believe is that they see the benefit in it, right? Like, just like, I always think...
Then they don't believe, Abe.
What do you mean? No. They're not cognizant of that's why they believe. They believe, right? But, like, they stick to it, and, like, their faith is, like, not... They never question their faith because they kind of see the benefit of it because of... Like, let's say people go through these weather events in life. Some tragic thing happens. Their nephew, something happens to them and they die, in a tragic way, or like they get they go through something that's like traumatic, and their faith gives them the comfort to go through that period, right? And they come out of it on the other side, and they see, faith was there for me when right? Like, so this is kind of like reinforcing what they already believe, right? So they're not making some cynical argument like I am of them, but their experience of what happened is that they weathered through this storm.
Yeah, they have made a mistake about correlation and causality, I think, in an obvious way.
Does it ultimately matter, right? Because you're living the life you're living, and your experience of it is going to be colored by what you believe, right? I mean, a lot of the stuff that people today blame social media on, like with like teenagers having like this negative self-image, is because they're buying into the story of like what a teenager should be, and if that doesn't correspond to their life, like I'm inadequate because of this, and they feel negative about themselves, right? So like the story you tell yourself about yourself is important because it'll impact if you're just fucking like stressed out and anxious, or you're living a very comfortable life. There's like a lot of religious people who are very like serene, right? And it could just be, this whole thing could be a sham, right? But their experience of it is like serene. And so like, what do you say to that? Because like, I'm on the same side as you on this, but like over the years, I'm like, if you're still within that framework of believing, like you can't look at it from, I think I'm beyond that, because like, not beyond it like I'm better, but just like the way that I think of it is just like, it's just a whole scheme just to I'm just kind of lying to myself to make myself feel better. But if you're not thinking that, and you just kind of take it sincerely, as long as you're not like killing somebody, I don't believe whatever.
As long as you're not bothering anyone else, then I'm not going to have a bone to pick with you. I think that,
and also
that's
not
clear.
only that, I would encourage that they do that.
How often are the true believers leaving all of the bones to be picked, right? Like they're not. The true believers are the ones who are most likely to be picking the bones and to be having the problem with the way everyone else is living their life. So yeah, if you're just a go along to get along sort of guy, and you believe some nonsense because it helps you get through the day and it doesn't harm anybody else, obviously I don't fucking care.
Right. But I mean, how depressing. They probably think like, man, if there wasn't an afterlife, right? And this is just like, I'm just here. One day I'm alive, one day I'm dead. The time
what
scale.
What a spectacular miracle that is.
No,
to experience consciousness.
Why is it a miracle? Well, I'm going through like just the slightest thing. I step on a nail. What was the point of that? Like, had I not stepped on the nail, that would have been preferable. Like, if it's meaningless, like, why do I even need to go through the point of stepping on the stupid nail?
What do you mean by? So this is where I never understand the meaningless thing, because it's meaningless because in 250 million years, all of the dogs and cats and people and goats and other mammals will be extinct. There will be very minimal land life left on the planet, because all of the good stuff's going to be in the ocean, and that's where you're going to be able to survive in a serious way. None of it fucking matters. Like, what do you mean meaningless?
Right, exactly.
Like, maybe you can reduce suffering a little bit in the short amount of time that you're on the planet. Maybe that can be your goal. But like, I don't know I don't understand why there not being some sort of ultimate reason for it all makes it meaningless. That's just.
But okay, but even taking religion out of it, people try to imbue meaning into their life in many different ways, right? Like they try to give themselves, find some purpose or some calling or something other than themselves. They have kids to kind of maybe, my parents fucked this up, let me try to correct that. Like, you need something, some sort of like forward momentum thing. And so like if your thinking is just like, it's a pleasure to be part of this meaningless exercise in existence, like, I think it doesn't work for a lot of people, because it's just like, I can't put my hat on anything. Like, what is this? You want me to take comfort in just nothingness?
But what if every explanation that can be offered is fucking paltry relative to the mystery of simply not knowing? And I think that that's sort of obvious too. Like, every single explanation for it offered by the paltry imagination of my fellow human beings, or at least the paltry imagination of my fellow human beings that can be swallowed by great masses of other human beings, right? Like if you're gonna water it down enough such that there can be 1 billion people walking around believing it, then probably it's not all that interesting. And I think that is sort of my feeling about the major religions of the world.
Does it not give you pause at why there's such an appetite? That it's such a universal, and not like, of course, you can put to any one person. But
because as they say, half of all people are of below average intelligence, Abe, and I've met a lot of people.
But even the below average humans are just the cream of the crop when you compare them to all the other animals, right? I mean, even the dumbest dummy, right, human is appreciably smarter than like 99.9% of these other things that are just hanging around, right? Because they're just, some of them are just like eat, sleep, fuck, like these animals, right? They're not putting them up. I get to go away, but like, so okay, let's take that half of the population that's under whatever the average is, right? Like, what is, like, religion's even a better argument. They here's a story, it's great, it ends well for you, you know? You're going to see somebody on the other side. Like, that's an intoxicating story. Like, the alternative that you're offering, which is like, you're here, then you're not. Like, that argument is not going to work, right? So that's why I think it has failed every time. If
I don't want it to catch on. I'm not here to. Obviously, I'm not here to proselytize, but you know, I don't know. There's something about. Well, whatever. It was a fun talk the other night. This is a fun talk now.
Right.
Ultimately, I don't know. I'm so comfortable with saying I don't know, I think is sort of what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And I say it all the time. I try to say it when I don't know things. And this is like any of these larger questions, to me, it's much more satisfying even to say I don't know than it is to say,
right.
This is what we've got figured out based on these lies that we're going to tell each other.
And I'll say this. I'm also comfortable with that, but I think a lot of people find that deeply uncomfortable. I'm reminded of like the people who have this they have their misgivings. You know, they're not like totally afraid of like flying to the point where like John Madden, like they won't. Like they'll still fly, but they try to get some sense of control by doing things. You know, like I will sit here, or I'll I'm not going to drink the whatever beverage that they give me, or like I'll come a couple hours earlier, or I'll take this drug to kind of, knock me out. Like all of these things, just to kind of like, I need to kind of have some sense of control, and believing gives you that, like, hey, it's all sorted out. Let me go play pickup basketball. Like I think it is a very tempting way to go about things. The only catch is that you have to actually believe it. If you don't believe it, the whole thing falls apart.
Yeah. All right. We should probably briefly talk about some news stuff today. Let's see. We didn't talk about it on the show, and I will use that to my advantage to say that that 20-minute conversation that we had about the government, the looming government shutdown.
Yes.
Hey, we fucking nailed it. It was just, we knew exactly what was coming. Unfortunately, it didn't get recorded, so it didn't make it out into the podcasting world.
That was
But well done by you, and an even better job by me in our analysis of the looming government shutdown. I
will say the about face, like people at work today were a little, like, I think a lot of people like in my job were like, I wasn't even planning that we're going to be here, because like as of Friday, basically everything looked like it was certain.
Right, you're checking out Airbnbs in Chattanooga or something like that.
I was ready to go Monday no matter what, because I'm that kind of employee. But I know some friends who scheduled things in the early October window because they assumed this was going to go.
First of all, to make clear my ignorance, I thought that we were clear until the next Congress. I don't know why I thought that. I mean, I was cleared up of this misunderstanding months ago. But for some reason, when they fixed this last time, I was under the impression that we were good through the end of the year. I don't know why I thought that. I know I said that on the show at the time that they did this last time. I thought for some reason that we were through January 3rd or something. But obviously we were not.
I think, are you mixing it up with the debt ceiling talks that they...
Yes, I am. Okay. In my head, I had mixed that up with the debt ceiling conversation, which is...
Yeah, there's all these different things. But yeah, what's currently happening is they have this 45, 47-day kind of kick the can down the road to kind of give more time for them to... Right,
and I believe, in all sincerity, what I said last week was something like, I think this is going to go up to the very last moment, and then they will get something done that moves it along a couple of months. And that's basically what I think. I suggested that the Republicans would be the ones that the Freedom Caucus assholes, the Matt Gaetzes of the world, would make a big stink about it and then find a way to go ahead and vote it through. That was wrong because, as it turns out, the Freedom Caucus assholes did not. And Matt Gaetz has now, even this evening, gone ahead and filed a motion to vacate the chair or whatever. That basically, they're going to have a vote of no confidence in Kevin McCarthy.
it seems kind of like a very small group, because like what's interesting is the reason I thought that basically a shutdown, at least for a little bit, was near certain, because the one thing, like the red line for McCarthy, based on what the concessions that the Freedom Caucus types extracted from him when they did the 15 rounds of voting for speakership, was that he was not going to put a bill on the floor where he needed Democratic votes to put it over the top, right? And so like it would have to, I mean, the Democrats can vote along with us, but it has to be something that the Republican group is comfortable with, and then we'll get whatever extra votes that we need. That did not happen. There were like 200 Democratic votes to push this along in the House versus, I think, like 100 and change Republicans supporting it.
McCarthy denied that, though, on the Sunday shows. He went on with Maggie Brennan on Face the Nation and was like, hey, the Democrats were standing in the way of this. And she's like, I mean, they all, not all of them, but they're the only reason that this went through. Republicans weren't going to be able to do it on their own.
We did not.
Were you confident we wouldn't shut down?
I was confident I could get something on the floor to make sure the option that we would not.
But
that
you weren't
our
sure
military,
it was going to pass.
Well, I wasn't sure it was going to pass. You want to know why? Because the Democrats tried to do everything they can not to let it pass. They did
Democrats were the ones who voted for this in a larger number than Republicans to keep the continuing resolution alive.
And I don't know how. I mean, I guess McCarthy has to find a way to kind of deflect some of this, but like it's kind of hard to make that case, because this continuing resolution that eventually did pass on Saturday, that was after attempts to pass something that got more support among the Republicans. But like the Matt Gaetzes of the world were kind of undermining those efforts, right? So like there were more bills that were more favorable towards the Republicans, the conservative ones anyways. None of those went through. And then as a last-ditch measure was like this, somewhat clean bill where like we won't include like additional funding for Ukraine. We won't have anything additional for the border. Everything else stay the same. We'll come back in November. But like that is why Matt Gaetz is doing this motion to vacate scheme, is because he's saying that you did the thing you were not supposed to do, because like these Democratic votes were available all along, right? So like you wait until the last minute to strike this deal. It'll be interesting to see what comes of this motion to vacate, because it only takes one person to kind of kickstart the process, but he'll need a lot more vote. You'll need a majority of the votes to remove McCarthy as Speaker. So now this kind of creates this weird situation where, because one of the Sunday panel shows that I was watching, they were talking about like, well, do you think the Democrats will support removing him, or will they support to keep him, because they'll still have to do business with them? Like, which direction would they go? And I can't imagine any scenario where they would be voting to keep, right? Like that would not make any sense.
The reason that the Democrats will help Kevin McCarthy here is because he's obviously preferable to any other Republican alternative who could, I mean, it's silly to say who could become Speaker, because they're basically none of the crazies, none of the Matt Gaetz Freedom Caucus types can become Speaker of the House. There is no viable alternative to Kevin McCarthy, in part because no one else wants the job, and the few others who do want the job simply would not be able to muster the support that they would need to get a majority of votes.
And if
and the Democrats are not going to sit idly by and let Marjorie Taylor Greene or Matt Gaetz or whoever become Speaker, right? Whereas they can decide simply by voting present, and if enough Democrats vote present rather than vote against or for Kevin McCarthy, that lowers the threshold for what makes a majority in the House, thereby allowing even 20 members of the Freedom Caucus to decide not to vote. And if you can just lower that threshold enough, you don't have to give your positive imprimatur to Kevin McCarthy if you're a Democrat, but you can say, look, at least when the when our backs were against the wall in terms of this shutdown stuff, he was able to reach across the aisle and actually get the government funded for another couple of months. And we'd rather be dealing with that guy than someone else.
Wait, so just to be clear, are you saying that they're going to support Kevin McCarthy's speakership by voting present or voting for?
Just by voting president.
Okay, so voting president.
There will not be an affirmative vote by a meaningful number of Democrats to say we want Kevin McCarthy to remain speaker. But after, because there's just maybe it will be vacated. I'm not saying that's impossible. Maybe Kevin McCarthy is going to have to do this all again. And maybe the Democrats are just that invested in humiliating, and maybe Kevin McCarthy, as we've discussed before, is kind of into that sort of thing, the humiliation aspect of all of this. I don't see it going 15 votes again. I don't see them doing that stupid theater of the whole thing again. But one can imagine a situation in which the Democrats are perfectly willing to let the Republicans make a spectacle of themselves for a couple of days, including allowing the vacating motion to go through. And then eventually we just end up in the same situation that we were a week ago with Kevin McCarthy now becoming the speaker, sort of by the Democrats saying we're just not going to participate any longer.
Okay. So, that's basically where, as far as what decision that the Democrats would likely take, is where I land too, which is basically just to vote present, kind of let them sort it out. I do wonder though, because my understanding is that the vote to remove is separate from the vote to nominate somebody else, right? So you could have it to where you just vote present and then they have enough. I don't think they'll have enough votes. I mean, my thinking is that nothing will come of this because there won't be enough Republican votes. Let's say all the Democratic votes are present, right? I'm sure there'll be a few that'll vote one way or the other, but let's just assume everybody else is out. Then you have, 221 Republican votes. You need to get half plus one of that. Do they have enough votes for that? Because this recent continuing resolution, netted them 91 Republican votes that were against this, clean bill. So I don't think they have 100 and whatever votes.
Well, Gates said, quote, "I have enough Republicans where at this point next week, one of two things will happen. Kevin McCarthy won't be the Speaker of the House, or he'll be the Speaker of the House working at the pleasure of the Democrats.
Right.
I'm at peace with either result because the American people deserve to know who governs them." Because his whole thing is that Kevin McCarthy is a Democrat. That's what he's saying now.
It's kind of a ridiculous thing.
Of course,
but neither of those things will happen. I mean, Gates is saying that either he'll be removed, he didn't have the votes for that, and then the Democrats will be voting for him, and then they'll own it. They're not going to vote for him, right? So, neither of those two things are going to happen. They'll likely...
Right, but it doesn't matter. Gates will still frame the present vote as McCarthy serving at the pleasure of the Democrats, because to some extent, that's a believable story, that they could have voted no, but they didn't. They chose to stand by and let their guy, Kevin McCarthy, take the gavel back.
The unlikely scenario where McCarthy is removed, I think it would create a scenario where everything would grind to a halt, because I don't think, unless, like you say, McCarthy just gets back up there, hey, the guy you just kicked out, vote me in again. There isn't another name that they can offer that will get enough, because all the Democrats will vote against the new candidate, right? As they did last time. So they'll be in the same situation as they were at the beginning of the year.
It sounds ludicrous, but it has been floated before. The name is Donald Trump. There are enough Republican votes in the House of Representatives to make Donald Trump the Speaker of the House, certainly. Kevin McCarthy is excited about Donald Trump becoming the president again, as he said again this weekend, that he fully expects Donald Trump to be the nominee and to win the election in 2024. If you're Speaker of the House of the United States Congress, can you be on trial anywhere in federal court?
Boy,
seems unlikely.
Also, if they were to do it, they need to do it before the State of the Union early next year, because you'll have Trump just in the background, right?
Trump back there, yeah.
Yeah, I think that nothing will come of this. I mean, I've been wrong before, but I just don't think there is enough appetite on the Republican side to go through the picking speaker. And so they're not going to allow whatever misgivings they have with McCarthy, they're not going to join forces with this Gates guy, who, by the way, how is he still like a prominent thing? I thought it was being ushered out of like prominence among the Republicans. I see him all the time now.
I don't know. He survived whatever that weird sex case was that was dismissed and was never brought against him. So.
Last week during the What Did You Watch, there was that movie I watched, The Money, and one of the terms coined, I think it was like online or maybe somewhere else, with the meme stock, and they said hold on to the stocks, diamond hands, right? Like you need to have diamond hands. And I can't think of a more apt way to describe what the politician facing something, like you need to have diamond hands, because all of the ones that caved to the pressure to resign, right? Like Al Franken, or what are they doing now? They're all regretting their choice to just leave, right? But Menendez, diamond hands, right? Like he's not going anywhere. Like he has to literally be put under arrest for him to leave. Like, and that's. I mean, if you're going to have gold bars in your clothing, right?
That was the story that I forgot that was on my list of underrated, hilarious stories of the last couple of weeks. Yeah. But they found like in his coat closet, like old, like like when you put on a pair of jeans from last winter for the first time, you've been wearing gym shorts and sweatpants the entire summer like a fucking slob.
Yeah.
And then you get the jeans out or the autumn jacket that you haven't worn for 9 months.
Yeah.
And you put it on and there's like a $20 bill in there. Like, oh fuck yeah, gonna be a good day. Bob Menendez and his wife have coats full of tens of thousands of dollars that they just keep the cash in their pockets. Apparently because, as a persecuted minority, his family has always kept cash handy just in case shit turns real bad. So he had $500,000 in cash and gold bars in his coat closet.
He is so like, I'll invoke whatever I need to invoke right now. I'll hide behind whatever group that I belong to. I'll do whatever it takes. But like, same thing with Gates. Like there really is this diamond hand strategy for politicians. Just do not let go. All of these, like, what was it, 20 and 30 senators, even like his like fellow senators. I bet you like Menendez, his office probably helped out a lot. Cory Booker, like, oh, you're junior senator in Jersey, will show you the ropes or whatever. And then just under the bus immediately, like, oh, fuck this guy. Gold bars, I can't defend that. You're out. Like, it was like 30 senators are saying you got to go. And he's like, nope, I will not do that. And what will happen? They'll look at him like, oh, this guy, he's not bowing to like shame, and which is it's very important if you're going to do the diamond hands in politics. You can't be bothered by shame, right?
Admit nothing, and have no shame at all.
No matter what the story is, how ridiculous the story sounds, and just weather the storm. Just hold on, and people will forget about it. 'Cause like literally, I turn on Face the Nation this morning from Sunday, and he's like the opening guest to the show. Like, hey, the weird-looking Kennedy guy, what's up? Like, and then he says his nonsense, and they go from there. Like, just do what that guy's doing, no matter what they accuse you of.
I don't think there's anything else to say about the shutdown. It's all very dumb and bad. All right, real quick. We were talking about the stories that we tell ourselves, and Lori's not wrong that I'm fascinated by the trans rights sort of conversation that's going on in the culture right now. And I think I've probably said most of the things that I would want to say tonight already in the past.
Did something new happen? Maybe I missed something. Is this just a general conversation?
There's just a couple of stories just a general conversation, a story that I saw or heard on NPR this afternoon. And then also there's some drama with Dax Shepard, who's having a podcast controversy.
The guy from Punk'd?
Yes, Dax Shepard, or as I know him best as the guy from Idiocracy who sits in the chair and baiting all the time. Go away,
he did a good job with that role. I mean, I bought it.
Oh, yes, fully believable. Also played the astronaut in the children's movie Zathura, which was sort of a sequel to Jumanji. Whatever. He has a podcast. People like him. He's married to the Kristen Bell.
And they're
who people also
they make
like.
the rounds on commercials. I see them on occasion, usually together.
Yeah. Anyway, he had a podcast where he had one of the Queer Eye for the Straight Guy fellas on, who's apparently non-binary and uses. By the way, if you read 4 different articles about this so-called controversy, you will see 4 different versions of what this person's pronouns are and how they are believed to identify. So this is a person who I've seen identified as non-binary, as trans, as some other thing. I've seen them say that they use any pronouns. I've seen them say that they have they/them pronouns, like whatever. The point being that it's impossible to get right. That if I go to the Slate article about this, it insists that one thing is true. The EW, Entertainment Weekly article about it says something else. The Variety article says something else again. And the Wikipedia entry says something else again. And almost the whole point of it is that this sounds like a shitty way of understanding and a bad faith way of understanding it. But the power in that is that this person, this Jonathan Van Ness, is definitionally now a victim of this entire news cycle, because there are 4 different articles, all 4 of which are entirely sympathetic to his position in the conversation, are either dead naming him or dead identifying him or using the wrong pronouns.
Is that also deading something? Like using a pronoun slightly wrong? Is that dead?
No,
pronoun?
I don't know. I am exaggerating. The dead naming thing, that using that as a convention for understanding the other things. The power of that is unspeakable. It's like the way that by claiming a sort of proprietary identity for oneself and then demanding that the world adhere to it, and going through year by year and having different notions of that identity out publicly, so that now I want you to call me in this fashion. That it speaks to a power that it challenges something in the way that I see the world in such a fundamental way, which is that Jonathan Van Ness, this person who identifies in a certain way, demands that the world refer to them in this certain way, which is demonstrably confusing, right? It is a weird way of forcing the world to refer to you, to the point where even people who are trying their absolute level best to do the polite thing are going to get it wrong, and then you get to claim the moral high ground there. And so it's a weird power, and I saw it on display in an interview that I heard on NPR today, on the Here and Now program in the middle of the day. It's out of Boston. Doesn't matter what it's out of, Bob, you weirdo. It's one teen explains gender dysphoria in a unique way with a toilet plunger. This is an 11-minute long interview with the teen in question and also their father. This is a person who's born, or as in the parlance of our times, they were assigned female at birth, and believes themselves to be a man and in their soul or whatever, which is another thing about the stories that we tell. This is a person with all of the biological reality of a female individual who is telling themselves, or their bad chemicals in their brain, or arguably, if you want to be as sympathetic and forgiving about it as possible, has a gendered soul, right? This is the way these people talk about this, that their gendered soul is different from the way that they physically present. So they were assigned the female gender at birth, but in reality they believe themselves to be in some way a male.
Even though it's a social construct.
Right. Even though the whole thing is a social construct, right? Because the moment that you start saying that you were assigned the sex at birth, they say no. right? That sex itself is in fact a social construct, and that any difference between, well, whatever. This is where I start to lose it. But at the same time, they say this is like, whether it's the story that they're telling themselves that they sincerely believe, or you could make an argument that it's the bad and unchangeable chemicals in their brain that are telling them this story, right? Maybe this person sincerely has gender dysphoria and is constantly being bombarded by their own consciousness that they're in the wrong body, right? And maybe, I think it's a plausible scenario that the only effective, or maybe the best effective treatment for that, is sex reassignment surgery, right? Is the social transitioning of this person into something that more closely resembles the thing that their brain or their gendered soul or whatever is telling them that they are. That's a plausible way of treating the problem. But also, I'm now in trouble because I called it a problem, right? Because like to suggest that it's a problem is a problem, right? And again, it's because it's so fraught with everything. We will eventually get to the point where, what, do you just want this person to kill themselves? Right. Like, is that what you want to have happen? Because so many of these people end up killing themselves. And by the way, never mind that it seems like a lot of those suicide statistics about trans youth have been willfully misinterpreted by activist groups in order to get outcomes that they want, right? Never mind that the Dutch Protocol is a study that was shamefully misinterpreted to get to an outcome that certain activists...
that outcome being a higher number to show that it's
to show that social transition and hormone blocking and puberty blocking and those sorts of things in children have a higher rate of successful outcomes than they actually do.
Oh, I see. I see what you're saying. Okay.
But to get to the sort of specifics of this one interview, and again, it's like an 11-minute long interview. I don't want to play an extended clip, but the amount of power that this individual child dictates in just listening to their father use the they them pronouns in this conversation, and the way that the father is positively reinforced by the child and by the person doing the interview suggests a level of power in that the dynamic of that relationship that is like, it's wildly out of place in any direction, whether that's the father in the direction of the child. Like, I'm not one of these people who thinks father knows best and that this asshole should just be listening to their father and that he's the fucking patriarch and he should be in charge and you just do whatever the fuck daddy says and that's how it should be. I'm not that person, right? Further, I'm not the person who says, actually, this kid knows best and that this kid should be dictating the terms of the way that they are spoken about by everyone else in their lives. Again, I think I've said on the show before, my pronouns are not for me.
Right.
I don't have pronouns. The pronouns are for everyone else. Right? This is not something that I own. It's not a part of my identity. It's the way that the person walking down the street who I've never met before simply conceptualizes me in their head. And I don't own any part of the real estate inside that person's head. Right. And to suggest that I do, it's a tyrannical instinct. And I can't get past it. And that's setting aside all of the rest of it, which is like, should we be giving puberty blockers and hormone transition to children, right? Which is a staggering thing that you better be absolutely fucking sure of, right? And this guy this Jonathan Van Ness goes on the Dax Shepard podcast, and they're having a normal conversation, not about any of this stuff.
So he didn't go on the show to talk about this issue. They're just there as a guest, and the topic comes up.
And Dax is like he's a perfectly acceptable centrist lib by all accounts, right? He's a progressive type. He believes in all of the right things. He's not a reactionary asshole who would insist on complaining about trans kids or something on his podcast. Who would do that? But anyway, they're talking, and they were having a conversation about whether or not the New York Times should be considered liberal-leaning, because Van Ness is insisting in lockstep with the organizations like GLAAD and other activist groups that because the New York Times has published in recent months some of the controversy around gender-affirming medicine, the awful euphemism that is, by the way. And I probably said this on the show before, but I'm going to say it again. If we're using the phrase gender-affirming medicine and we cannot agree that is euphemistic language, then we've already fucking lost the battle, right? Like there's so much, there is more loaded into the phrase gender affirming medicine than there is loaded into my mother's belief that like I chose her as a pre-bodied soul, right? Like there's that level
right.
of work has gone into crafting that belief. Anyway, they're having this conversation, and I'm going to read from this Entertainment Weekly write-up of this, because something else that I noticed, I mean, it's silly to say, but if you go for a while without consuming NPR, and then you flip on NPR after a while, it can, and you've just been reading like the New York Times and the Washington Post, and then also you consume whatever normal conservative-ish leaning content that you might consume out there in the world. I tend to get my news from liberal-leaning outfits, and I get my commentary from right-leaning outfits, I guess, just by nature. I'm trying to balance the two things out. If you can, and it's ridiculous to say because now I'm thinking of Mike Pesca as a right-leaning commentator he's like
right.
a supremely progressive individual, right? Who would think of himself as, probably self-describe as a liberal, a fairly far left liberal. But because he's not in lockstep with everybody else on the identity question, he becomes described often as a reactionary or as a conservative type of commentator. Anyway, I'm reading from this Entertainment Weekly write-up of the Dax Shepard controversy. During the wide-ranging conversation on Shepard's podcast, Armchair Expert, the duo clashed while discussing whether the New York Times should be considered a liberal-leaning organization, given what Van Ness described as anti-trans content. To this, Shepard argued using conservative talking points, such as the outlet was merely challenging and asking questions about issues, such as teens taking puberty blockers. The way that that's phrased in an article about this at Entertainment Weekly includes so much bias. I hate when people talk about bias in the media, but to suggest that the New York Times challenging and asking questions about teens taking puberty blockers are conservative talking points is to betray all of your own biases that are going into this in the first place, right? And I don't demand, this is not to say that I want straight down the middle content from EW.com and their celebrity section, which is highlighting a controversy in Dax Shepard's podcast. Yeah. No. What I'm saying is that the way that this question is talked about everywhere presumes that there's a certain right way to understand this conversation, and the right way is whatever the activist class is insisting the right way is, and that anything else is completely unacceptable.
Right, or the conservative talking point talk. You know, Trump was like in court recently, and somebody was talking about like summary judgment. Like in summary judgment, basically, it's like there's going to be an aspect of the case that's assumed as true, right? So basically, a judge decided in his fraud case, as far as the inflating his worth, like it is accepted as fact that you did inflate this, right? So like going forward, when we try to settle the other issues at hand, we have to accept as fact that you inflated your worth, right? And so, like, it sounds like there seems to be a summary judgment when it comes to certain things, right? So, like, this writer, the person who wrote this piece, there's like a summary judgment on anything that's different from what the accepted belief is is a conservative talking point. So, like, even if you're not,
and where did that's the thing. Where even did the accepted belief come from?
Right,
and it came out of nowhere, from nothing, from a bunch of weirdo sociologists and anthropologists and psychologists who decided that this is just a civil rights question on par with gay rights and women getting the vote and black people getting civil rights in the 1960s. Right. That anything that a marginalized class of people, a self-identified marginalized class of people, insist is the truth, must be the truth moving forward.
Right. And it's kind of hard to have the debate if you are of that opinion. Like, we can talk about it just in a narrow sense because the big stuff has already been settled. And if you don't subscribe to that, then you're on the outside. Earlier, I know there's more on that, but just real quick. Earlier, I was talking up religion, but there are, as many people will understand, there are downsides to religion. For instance, like a lot of it's not called a religion, but a lot of the behavior that I'm noticing when it comes to issues like this reminds me of religion. Like the orthodoxy, the needing to cast out anyone that veers off course. Like, these political parties and ideologies, there are many different issues, right? And so if you disagree with somebody on one issue out of 10, that's it. You're in agreement with the other 9. You're not going to throw them out because you disagree on one issue out of 10, right? But when it's a religious kind of thing, like, you need heretics. Like, it's heretical to take the position that the New York Times has taken. So I don't care what other issues we agree on. You are a heretic. You're on the outside looking in. And just like with any other example that falls under this, they're trying to cast out anybody who they'll deem as a heretic. And it falls in line with the way religions work. There's no, like, God here. It's just like this, like, godless religion. Like, where it's just like, you have to believe in these things. Don't worry where it came from. This is what we believe. And it doesn't matter if it's, like, true. Like, there's not even, like, the passage of time, right? I mean, there's... Speaking of Mike Pesca, he had an episode just out recently where somebody wrote a piece about how they got the trigger warning movement wrong, right? Like 5-6 years ago, there was all this hullabaloo about, like, you don't fucking scare people. You got to give them a heads up about
Jill
something.
Filipovich, yeah.
Yeah, so, like, there was this whole thing where, like, and to me, like, I was just like, this is not a workable thing. Like, I mean, you're reading an article, you're an adult, you can figure it out. Like, there's no way this is going to be a thing. And my thinking is, like, the passage of time will sort it out, and, like, here we are. People are like, that didn't work because it wasn't, like, not effective. Like, it's not like, oh, let's not do the trigger warning because it doesn't seem to work, right? But it's the opposite. Like, it's actually causing harm. Like, if you make everything be this big thing, you're gonna process it as this big thing, no matter where it falls on the spectrum. And if you make things worse than they are, your experience of it is going to be negative, and it's not going to be a positive. So the passage of time has kind of taught those lessons. I suspect the passage of time on this, there's going to be a similar tale where, like, hey, you know what? Maybe we jumped the gun, right? Because there's so much energy on enforcing what people believe because they think that they're under threat because the New York Times is stepping out of that way of thinking. These random celebrities who are otherwise liberal are saying these things. So they're trying to, like, they're, like, in a siege mentality, right? So, like, they're not thinking of, like, the merit of the argument the other person is saying. They feel like they're under siege because you're not accepting the thing that they want you to accept.
But it's also been so you say that with the passage of time things will get better, but if Entertainment Weekly and Variety and the 4 other articles that I read about this today all take the position of the activist class as gospel, right, as the only correct position, and everything else is just conservative talking points or reactionaryism from old white men whose opinions don't matter because of the peculiarities of their identities, then what will the passage of time actually achieve if the culture has already accepted a ludicrous series of lies. Like Jonathan Van Ness, this guy is going on there saying that there is no biological advantage of men over women in sports. Like that's a claim that he makes, and he asserts that the science backs that up. That we have science now that shows that that is the case. And he just says it.
Wait,
and
he said that?
And then he also said yes, and he also says things about puberty blockers, about how the studies have just shown that blocking the puberty of children is good because it allows them to figure stuff out. And, why should somebody – he says something in his Instagram video where he's like, if a person wants to be a figure skater or a whatever when they're a child, why would you deny them that? I should just pull it up. Hang on. It fucking drove me crazy. We have dozens of states in the United States that have outlawed gender-affirming care for trans kids. So if there was a young trans girl who wanted to be a figure skater, a gymnast, or a golfer, she wouldn't be able to access the hormone blockers that would prohibit her from going through a male puberty. In other words, what he's saying is, if the person goes through male puberty, then they will not be permitted to become the figure skater of their dreams further on down the line. And therefore, we have to block that thing from happening in order to preserve the possibility that she can be a figure skater in a red state. As though what matters is in this conversation, as though what matters is the absurd dreams of a prepubescent child about what sport they want to do when they're 17 or 15 or 22, right? Like, how can the whims and desires of a prepubescent child matter in this conversation at all? You're not a serious person if you think that's right. And I think that it's going to be a very painful and weird thing that happens in the culture when we realize this sort of insanity that we went through when we thought that the right thing to do, that like not even if in the occasional situation where it would and in fact did save a life to give a sex reassignment surgery to a child, in the extraordinarily rare cases where that happens, right? But how are we going to deal with the fact that like we just that huge portions of the culture unthinkingly swallowed that as the correct response to any child saying, I don't think that I'm the gender that I present as, right? There's no version of 30 or 40 or 50 years from now where what we're doing with 6 and 8 and 10 and 11-year-old children is just stopping puberty, right? That there's some 10 or 15 or 20% of kids are just going to delay puberty because they're not sure, that we just have to stop everything until we can figure out what the hell is going on, right? Like, that's not going to be the outcome of this. I think that you're out of your goddamn mind if you think that's the outcome here. But that has become the only acceptable way of talking about this in polite society. And if you're Dax Shepard and you want to have this conversation, now you're being labeled as someone who's throwing out conservative talking points. And then in Slate magazine, at the end of their write-up about this, I'm going to quote, "At the same time, while I understand his central argument that conversations like this are important, I don't think it's healthy for people to always have to be on the defensive about their human rights. Those kinds of lines of questioning, when someone says they're just asking questions while they continue to invalidate a core part of your experience, don't need to be parroted on massive platforms by trusted people." So what she's saying in this piece about the Dax Shepard controversy is that any conversation around the edges of this question of whether or not there ought to be puberty blockers for children, or whether or not post-pubescent males should be permitted to compete in women's sports, that is denying the human rights of that group of people. That is an absurdity. That is a complete non sequitur from the conversation that Dax Shepard is having, right? Saying that I'm concerned about high school swimmers not being able to compete against other people of their gender and instead getting blown out of the water by people who have gone through male puberty. That's not an invalidation of anyone's life.
Right.
That's not saying you don't have any right to exist. No, who is saying that? And why is that the thing that we immediately go to? Why do we accept that level of hysteria about this conversation is necessary and moral, right? This is someone wielding a giant moral cudgel in the conversation.
Right.
And it's just complete. And then I'm the one who gets accused, somebody like me, accused of being the one who's in a moral panic. I'm in the moral panic?
Wait, who's
are you
making
out of
that
your
claim?
goddamn
That
mind?
the people who are making the who don't hold or they don't espouse the same things they are the ones in a moral panic? I mean, like, are they talking about like what like what you would imagine, like some sort of Fox News like item, like, oh, in this high school they got like this some unfounded thing? Like, are they talking about that, or like what do they mean by?
The suggestion is that any objection to the trans rights movement is just a moral panic, and that the fact that I'm even talking about it as someone who doesn't have any skin in the game suggests that I've become swept up in some sort of grand moral panic.
Okay,
it's just,
I see. Even though, like, I mean, like the stuff that's being presented as like just the fact, a lot of people don't believe that. I don't know what the number would be, but the vast majority of people do not believe that. So, like, is this effort by like just people who are trying to, like, I guess, I don't know. I can't even like give a description of their motivation. Like, they're trying to force this thing that's not going to take, right? This is going to be another, like, to me, like, I have a very little concern about these discussions because it is such a hard thing to convince people when, just like with the pronoun thing, where, oh, today I'm going to refer to me this way, and then like let's back off and you, like, people are not going to respond very well to that. So like, and you're telling,
I agree that people aren't going to respond well to it, but I'll make sure that all of the links are in the show notes. I don't expect anybody to actually go through and read them all. But if you go and you look at the read-ups of this stupid Dax Shepard controversy, you will see that there are, and I'm sure I'll be able to find one on Fox News that will prove the point. But like, there will be fucking Clay Travis and some other asshole podcasters will talk about this, no doubt, and they will talk about it in one way, and then there will be the mainstream way of talking about it, which, I'm sorry, like, to me, EW and Variety and Slate, those are all mainstream outlets, right? Those are all, and the Washington Post, that is an extremely normal way of consuming your news about anything. And all of them make this exact move, which is to say Dax Shepard is getting his talking points from conservatives and is some degree of a reactionary and shouldn't be questioning the basic human dignity of trans individuals. When that's not, like, it's just a completely unfair way of framing the conversation. And then there will be the Clay Travises, and then there will be the FoxNews.com story about it, which will make its own, largely make its own unfortunate mistakes or take its own liberties with the actual facts in a way that's not helpful, certainly. Right. But will be fundamentally telling a sort of more honest version of the story than even the Entertainment Weekly write-up of it will be. Right. And it's like, I know that you think, and I think that probably yours is a more obviously it's a more measured understanding of what's going on, a less concerned way of understanding what's going on. But to me, it's telling that this is the way that the conversation is allowed to be had in the media on one side of it, and then on the other side, you're simply, these people are the bad people, and this is the way that the good people have the conversation. And I agree. Some excessive majority of Americans, when examining the underlying fundamentals here, probably don't agree with the Slate writer in the conversation, but at the same time, don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, right? And they just want to be polite, and that is something else that is weaponized by the activist class.
Or not to give people who apply this kind of pressure more ammo, but they could also be responding to I don't want to get the flack, right? Which is not where you want your writer to be. Or if I say something, then all the people are going to be attacking me, and so I'll just play along for now. My long-term view on this, and I mean within the next 3 to 5 years, not 250 million years. Within the next 3 to 5 years, this is going to collapse of its own weight. They're going to look back and say it wasn't a workable way to go about it. The hormone stuff, injecting it to kids. Maybe the parents will do whatever, and also in the grand scheme of things, the number of people that this actually impacts is very small. In a country this big, this issue has the actual issue has an outsized role in the debate, but the way we kind of talk about things is important because, like you say, why all of a sudden are you accepting things that are if you were being that critical about how people say things, that statement that person made about men, women, it's all the same, they could play in the same league. I mean, that is such an obviously, you just look and watch the sports, that is not true. You kind of risk losing the credibility that you have, I think, if you make those kind of points, right? So that's a concern. The people who are kind of espousing these things, they maybe are targeting just their inner group, that they hang around with, but to a wider audience, you lose credibility when you say things like men and women, no difference physically. You're not going to find that support anywhere outside a very small group of people, right? And so
Right, except that I agree. However, when I turn on NPR for the first time in a couple of weeks and I listen to story after story after story, and the extent to which they are disconnected, that they're simply having a conversation that almost that is so far beyond reality based, I don't know. There's a way that that ideological capture happens within an institution that is no longer beholden to the normal rules of discourse, that they have become instead beholden to the most irrational or emotional or hysterical voices in the room, and that anything else is just completely unacceptable. It's how you end up with Fox News sounding the way Fox News sounds, and it's how you end up with NPR sounding the way NPR sounds, and it's just both of them are just so completely disconnected from what I would consider to be reality that I don't know how they come back from it.
Right, it is. I do wonder if I guess they don't look at it this way because I don't think they're aware of it. But how insular must the lives be of the people who make these, write these articles and are on NPR, right? I mean, do people not go on road trips? Do you not see kind of how the world is? It just seems kind of you live in a very insular environment where you say these things with such confidence, and you expect everybody else to kind of just repeat after you. It just seems kind of how many people are you interacting with? Cause just by chance, if you live in a big city, you're going to come across people who think a little differently, and you're going to kind of take that in and maybe kind of change your views. But it's just no, this is the one and true way, not unlike religion. It's kind of a weird thing. Right.
And it has so much to do with and I didn't play a clip from the NPR interview with the young trans person, because to some extent, I just feel bad for them. Because I think that things are going, and who knows, things might turn out great for this individual, but it's so weird to listen to an extended interview with a child and the notion that the things that they're saying simply cannot be challenged, because to challenge them, and certainly it's not going to be challenged on NPR, but to challenge anything that this child is insisting about their life and the way that they conceive of themselves and the story that they want to tell, that to challenge it at all is to do potential existential harm to that individual, because otherwise they might kill themselves. Like that is what's constantly hanging over this conversation is Dad was so brave to do the right thing here, and he's such a good person because you didn't kill yourself, right? And you have such good parents, and I'm such a good, understanding, and empathetic journalist that I wouldn't dare breach any sort of a challenge. The thought of challenging wouldn't even occur to me, because we know that the guillotine is standing over our heads in the forms of the conversation about trans suicide and self-harm. And it's like, I don't know. It's not a healthy way to be in the world. No. It's getting late here. You've been listening to Cast Iron Brains, a podcast with Bob and Abe. Find the show over at brainiron.com, castironbrains.com. Send us an email, brainironpodcast@gmail.com, if you're out there listening. The opening and closing themes of the show were composed by Mark Gillig, tetramermusic.com, TETRAMER music.com for more from him and his wonderful band. Abe, sounds like you made it to Stop Making Sense in the theaters this week. How was it?
It was great. You know, this is a recurring thing with me because my memory isn't very good or reliable, but going into the theater, I was thinking, okay, I probably know like half of their songs, right? Probably I'll know half of their songs. I may not know like every word, but I've heard the song here, I heard the song there, and I'm listening to the thing.
Had a couple of late nights at Papa John's way back in the day. Bob probably played this record a time or two.
It turns out that I only did not know one of the songs. I was like, I know this, and then they play another one, because they had this setup where it kind of starts very small. It's just like one person, and then all of the different things come into place.
David Byrne comes out and just does a solo version of Psycho Killer for a few minutes there.
Also, this is another recurring thing. There are a lot of people that I have experienced for the first time when they're older, and then I go the other way. So like I never I've heard his the band's music, but it's always like on the radio. I don't associate a face, and like this David Byrne guy would make the rounds on the Sunday morning, CBS, whatever shows when like Anthony Mason does a piece on a musician and he's old and he's talking about like his Broadway thing and he's old. And then I see this guy, like he's almost like gaunt, like very young. I was like, holy shit, this is like he's like so much younger. It's just weird. Like I'm experiencing this last, like how he used to look.
Right.
It's kind of
this is not how it's supposed to go.
Yeah. But no, it was a fun experience. I mean, it was like it seemed like the trend is to show more of this kind of stuff because it seemed like it's working. The Stop Making Sense was somewhat successful. They're doing the Taylor Swift, and then Beyonce is also getting in on the action the upcoming months because I guess they have all these open dates because of the strike. Right. But I think like you would think, okay, well, why not just go to even like a tribute band, like a live band would be preferable. But no, it works. Like if you have a good product, you put it on the screen, people will enjoy it.
You've spoiled yourself or ruined yourself possibly for concert films going forward because this is like sort of understood to be maybe the single greatest concert film ever made.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, it's good. Yeah, I mean, those people are right. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad that you liked it. I was excited to recommend it to you last week.
It was a lot of fun. I did also see one other thing in the movies. It was a Creator. So like Denzel Washington's kid is in this.
Right, John David Washington starring in a movie directed by the guy who did Rogue One.
Yes. So on the good side, like a visually, like I say, I don't know how, because the budget wasn't like like Avatar, but like they made it look like $1 million. Like so, it was a very visually kind of like stunning movie. The plot just kind of is all over the place. It's kind of a mess. Like especially at the end, it's just one of those like I don't know how to end this story, and so they kind of end it. The last like 40 minutes, not very good.
So I've seen people say that this is one of the most interesting and imaginative movies about this subject, and one of the more interesting sci-fi movies to come out in a few years. And I've seen a couple of people who are extremely excited about it and think it's really great, but acknowledge maybe the story's not quite all there.
The story's not. Yeah.
And then I've seen other people say this is a total fucking mess, piece of shit movie. Don't even bother. And it seems like nobody bothered based on the box office returns.
It didn't do great, and I watch. Not that this is an indicator of anything, but I always take it as an indicator. Like if I go see a movie opening night, I do the math. Like the theater's like 40% or under on like, oh, this movie is struggling. And this was closer to that. Like there are other movies that are just like a complete sellout. The movies that do well, especially on opening night. And this wasn't that. There wasn't, I do like the story though, because it was, basically it's pitting the robots versus the humans, right? And there's like in the near future where there was like a nuclear strike or something happened in like Los Angeles, like 1 million people died, and the humans are like blaming it on these fucking robots. We need to get rid of the robots. Turns out like it was human error, but you got to pin it on somebody, and so they're in a war, and like the robots are coming up with this like super weapon in the form of like a humanoid child who Denzel Washington's kid is trying to whatever, but like he is like a human. He's supposed to be on the side of the human.
When is John David Washington going to get his name in your mouth? When are you going to have that level of respect?
So here's the thing: this was his last chance because he has been not the strength of any of the movies that I've seen. Like Tenet, he was like, he was okay. Then I saw Amsterdam, wasn't a very good movie. He was okay. Like he's just in a lot of movies where he's just there. And like this was like I think he's like best of the bunch, but that's not saying much. Like he's still Denzel Washington's kid. I'm like, how do I know charisma doesn't work like this, but like, how do you not have like even a little charisma of your old man? Like,
yeah, I don't get it. I have not found him to be very good in anything that I've seen him in. Maybe, I guess, the Spike Lee movie from a few years ago was the most compelling.
Oh, that's right. He was in that.
He was in Black Klansman, right?
Yeah.
But, like, I don't know.
Right, yeah.
He doesn't seem particularly great.
He's fine. But just real quick, because I do have one more thing to mention. This is HBO, the Naked Attraction, the British import. But
did you watch it?
Yes. Real quick on the creator, though. So they have this humans versus robots. So the robots, they're like, well, I don't know, why are they trying to get rid of us? We can just coexist, and they're fighting just to kind of be alive. But they're not like they have like no like negative feeling about the. I mean, it's not that negative, but the humans like, oh, we can't. This is intolerable. Like your existence is not tolerable, right? So there's no peace when you're still fucking around, like you're hanging around. You have to go, and all of the human strengths, like all of the regular intelligence that people talk up, like math and science and just like regular intelligence, like the robots. They got you there, right? Like that's a easy,
way better than us.
Such an easily to program thing. So like, how smart is smart, right? If it could be reproduced that easily, what the robots cannot reproduce, or the evil intelligence, like the conniving and the sinister plots, and the humans were destroying them. Like these fucking robots.
I'm surprised that you didn't really like this movie.
I mean, it was an enjoyable 2 hours because it's just funny. Like these robots are like, all right, we sorted this out. So as robots, they kind of go on sleep mode like a computer would, and like this is like. I don't know, these fucking robots don't know this, but they leave themselves fully exposed to a human, turning your power off. This was in the story. It's like, oh, well, I got this guy, so he just turns the power off. I'm like, that's a pretty.
Sounds like a very short movie. Ultimately,
it only happened in one scene, but like, the humans are doing well only because we're just evil. Like, it'd be a good idea if we did this, and like. Denzel Washington's kid, like he turns like, oh, these robots are pretty good, right? So he's like protecting them, and like you kind of he capitulates to these robots, and he sinks the humans. I forget how the story ended, but like it just kind of the story just kind of falls apart. It had promise, it looked great, but Yeah.
Well, I'm sort of excited to see it eventually. I don't know that I'll necessarily make it out to the theaters.
Yeah, just overlook all the negative stuff. All right, real quick. Naked Attraction. I saw an episode, and
so this is the thing that we talked about last week. I don't think we named it, but it is called Naked Attraction.
Yeah, so there's a British show. I guess they were showing on a regular television there. Not as prudish as the Americans, apparently. The concept of the show is like, instead of asking questions and doing all this other nonsense, we will just show like 6, so if you're a guy and you're attracted to women, they'll show 6 women. If they had like somebody who goes both ways, so they have 3 men, 3 women. Basically, they cater to whatever you're into, right? But the way that it starts is that they open from the bottom up, right? So they'll show you somebody's vag or some like this is the most uncircumcised dicks I've seen ever, because I don't know what's going on over there, but whoa. So they have to whittle it down, right? So you only get that much information to get.
I don't appreciate you first saying there's a lot of uncircumcised dicks that I saw, and you need to whittle it down. That's not 2 sentences I want to hear back to back.
So they whittle it down, and then they start to see like other things, and eventually they see their face, and they make a decision. Just from my limited.
So is the first reveal? So the first reveal is waist down, or is it like? Okay, wow. So they don't start with like knees down.
No,
they just go right to the
whoop,
right to the cock and balls treatment.
And they have very frank discussions about like, oh, do you like a lot of pubes, or I'm not a big pube man, and like this. I guess the British are like that. Anyways, there is no indication that this is a useful way to determine suitability. Because like the couple of they do like 2 contestants like per episode. I think I'm like 2 episodes in, so I've seen like 4 of these things, right? And every time.
Now, to be clear, this is not an American version of the show. They're just showing us the original British television
version.
program.
Yeah, the original British show. These are all British people. They'll do like, once they make their selection, they'll go on a date, and then they'll follow up with them in a few weeks. And almost always it's like, I don't know. I mean, I guess, I find you like hot, but like there's nothing really there. Like there's like no indication that that is a useful way to determine.
It performs no better than normal internet dating, then, is what you're saying.
Maybe even worse. I will say though, I have long accepted that I have slight color blindness, right? I'll accept that. I don't think I can see all the colors and all that you stupid other people can see. Fine. Right. But I think I'm not wrong all the time. There was like what was clearly a purple color, because they have the contestants behind different, I want to get rid of the blue. Boo, get out of here. So like, they don't know their names, or the person with, the fat one, like they can't say that. So they'll just do by color. And it's clearly like a purple color they keep on referring as pink. And I'm like, there's no way I'm wrong about that. Like this, and I don't know, maybe the British do pink and purple differently, but my vision when it comes to color can't be that bad that I can't tell pink and purple.
Well, I have no way of answering you here because I can't see that.
I will take a screenshot and send it to you at some point, but like it is clearly one of the colors and not the other.
Do the producers try to match up people of similar, because you said, I don't want the fat one. So does the contestant's body shape roughly mirror the 6 potential dates' body shape?
So there's some variety in body shape, but so they don't really spell this out, but they basically, you give them what you're into, but they're like big boobs, small boobs, or like bush, no bush, like that kind of level of information, not like whatever, right? So like they say these are the things that you said you liked about the opposite sex. Gotcha. And it'll come in different packages.
So I like an athletic build, for example. You're not going to end up with a bunch of tubbos on the
unless it's like some sort of sumo wrestler woman or whatever. But like they try to kind of accommodate. And so far there's only been one person that was like slightly heavier, and she got kicked out like almost immediately. So,
it's not funny, but it's like it at the very least, this is an extremely, I was about to say very revealing show, but I'll try not. I mean, it's too late. I've said it now, but it's revelatory of human appetites in a way that is extremely unforgiving, I would
Right.
imagine. Like it's not, you're not going to overlook when what's presented to you is the slab of meat.
Yes.
There's not really any other way to judge the slab of meat than by its slab of meat nature.
Right.
And
these are not models. These are very much regular people and their regular people bodies. These are like.
So it reinforces my hypothesis that there are way more humiliation fetishists out there in the world than we would normally think, right? Like, why are normal people with normal genitals and normal bodies subjecting themselves to extreme public nudity and judgment?
So,
I don't understand
do you think
it
it's
at
just
all.
our perspective, like the prudish American? Maybe it's like just, every day for them over there. I don't know what it's like in Britain, but and excuse young as you would expect, like 22-year-olds, 24-year-olds. Oh, I'm a barista, and here's my cooch. Like have at it.
Right.
Like it's very
It's all downhill from here, too, by the way. If you're fucking 22, it's not getting any better long term.
I will say, though, a surprising number of people are big on tattoos, even in Britain. Tattoo, everybody.
Everybody's tattooed. Abe, almost afraid to ask. Have you got anything else for us tonight?
Nope.
Well, I guess that's all we've got for tonight, then, and we'll talk to you next time.
Later.
Because we didn't sleep a lot.
Let me tell you why we didn't sleep a lot, first of all. The pillow that I found, and I should have tried more pillows, admittedly. Very fluffy. I wasn't uncomfortable. My neck feels fine. But my stupid brain, I would be sleeping, and then my brain would be like, oh, you're sitting up. You must be awake.
Ah.
And I would try to go back to sleep, but like it was too upright. It was like sleeping sitting up. And then
And you say because it was fluffy or like firm?
What?
This-
It was fluffy.
Okay.
It was, but like not. It was very big.
Okay.
Lori had pillow problems.
Pillow problems.
I'm not going to use the term pillow princess because that has some certain sexual connotations
Does
that
it?
I'm not.
Well, I feel like that.
She's a bit of a pillow princess in this particular case, though.
We stayed up really late talking to people.
Sure, and
night after
we stayed up
night.
late. We were drunk, drinking
I
at
only
least
drank one
of
night.
the nights. Yeah, and didn't sleep great for various reasons. And then we had the concert last night, and we were out until almost.
We stayed up late again, and we couldn't decide whether or not we should even go to this show. And it was like, what are we going to regret more? Like, am I going to regret not seeing one of my favorite bands in town where I live? Or am I going to regret seeing them? And, like, I'm going to regret either thing. So we went.
So Lori left it up to the 10-year-old who is always up to do stuff. It's
Not
so,
always.
Calvin,
Not always.
Should we do stuff? And Calvin was like, yeah, we should probably do stuff.
Because he, on Saturday watching football, he didn't want to go downstairs. He wanted to just stay in the room and watch.
Yeah, it's because he was mostly concerned with his video game experience more so than anything else. But so how those Giants do tonight?
You don't have any parlays? You taking the week off?
No parlays, but I did lose $10 on the Giants tonight.
Oh, not particularly close. Ooh, 24 to 3.
24 to 3. That's
like
no
Geno
good.
Smith or whomever they got. I'm not sure what happened.
Oh my God. Daniel Jones, 97-yard pick six in tonight's game.
No.
He's so bad.
Oh, no.
The proceeding was created with 100% human content.